quickly looking through the names, and I suppose there isn't anyone, that left field you would expected to be in the squad. So like it just shows you, like, you have one good game. So somebody like Jeremy Loughman there, who scored for Munster at the weekend against the Bulls, played pretty well, and he's into the mix. So it just shows if you play well in these interpros, especially that Andy Farrell and the rest of the coaching staff are looking on and taking into consideration these performances against your potential opposition for an Irish jersey if it came about. So that's somebody as well. It's good to see Robert Balakoon back in. Jacob Stockdale, from an Ulster point of view, he is out injured with an ankle injury at the minute, but with him being included, that would suggest that he's not that far away and that he's going to get some game time before these Autumn Nations games start. So yeah, I think it's pretty self-explanatory. One thing that's maybe jumped out, and I've literally had a couple of texts about it, is Kieran Frawley is in the squad, but yet he didn't go on the Emerging Ireland tour. And Crowley, who did go on the Emerging Ireland tour and played really well on the Emerging Ireland tour, isn't in the squad, which would suggest that the Emerging Ireland tour was pointless then, because if they're using the Emerging Ireland tour as a marker of where some of these guys are at, and if you go on that tour and you play really well, like Balakoon, who's obviously back in the mixture for the Autumn International. So yeah, that seems a bit bizarre considering Frawley has played very little rugby, like, in the professional game. Like, he's been injured quite a bit. We know he was on the tour there last summer, went okay in that Mari game, of course, but I'm sure Crowley's I'd say he's still just going to be happy enough to keep banging on the door. But I think the chat before the Emerging Ireland tour was that it was going to be like, these are the lads that are next in line. This is a potential shop window for the 2023 Rugby World Cup, and then all of a sudden guys play well on it but aren't included in this sort of nation series. And when you have Fiji right slap bang in the middle of South Africa and Australia, that's a perfect opportunity to give some of these younger guys game time. So yeah, that's probably one of the odder decisions for me, but hopefully Crawley can get a bit of game time, because we know he's a great operator and a really good player. He just hasn't had a run of consistent games to really show what he's about. Munster are back to winning ways, but one win against the Bulls side that I think were still in the pub last weekend. They didn't actually get anything going in the game until really late on, 65, 70 minutes, started to play a bit more. I think it's Johan Goosen, the out half for the Bulls, just couldn't get any attack whatsoever. The forwards tried their absolute socks off, but it was the perfect game for Munster. Like, that's exactly what they needed. I'm not saying it was an easy hit out, but a game that you're going to win 9 times out of 10. You're going to play half decent. Joey Carberry, there's been question marks yet again around his performances. He played fullback against Connacht, was all at sea during that game. So he got a man of the match performance, put in a really dominant kicking display, ran the ball back a couple of times, counter-attack, created that Jeremy Loughman try. So there were a number of positives out of it. I think the most pleasing thing about the Munster game was probably the last 10 minutes. I don't know, Graham Rowntree, the head coach of Munster, talked about that in his post-match interview about the heart and fight that they showed to keep the Bulls out, because the Bulls were just hammering away at their line. And they did keep them out. They were resolute. They shut them off, give away numerous penalties, but they managed to escape. And that was a real pleasing sign for Munster. It's going to be a different ball game getting in against Leinster. Munster still missing a number of players. It sounds like Tadhg Byrne's going to be out for a period of time as well with a groin injury. If there's one man on that Munster team that you can't afford to lose, it's Tadhg Byrne. So we'll see how that pans out over the next few weeks. Obviously, Keith Thurles, Andrew Conway, Simon Zebo, Mike Healy, just to name a few others. They really are attacking threats for Munster. So I think all the momentum's with Leinster. Are Munster back? they're definitely not back with a bang from 5 or 6 years ago, if we remember them, but they're definitely back into winning ways. And it's another Interpro derby. I'm sure they'll be up for this one. Completely different ball game this week against the Sharks, going from Johannesburg, 30 degrees, real dry heat, and obviously playing at altitude, 5,500 feet of altitude. Both teams, the Lions and Ulster, looked out on their feet. It was like watching rugby in slow motion at times. And anybody who has never experienced altitude can't relate to it, because I've been there myself. It's really, really tough. It takes a few weeks for you to actually settle down and get adjusted to it. So very different this week. Of course, sea level down in Durban. It's going to be a lot more humid. The Sharks were rampant in the last 20 minutes against Glasgow. It was a pretty tight game last week, and then they brought a few of their heavy hitters off the bench. Mapimpi, Mbanambi, obviously Etzebeth started the game. And yeah, they have a lot of quality on show. One of the best squads, I think, in the URC this season. So it's going to be an unbelievable task. I think the way Ulster played their hand last week against the Lions, for me, they fielded a slightly weaker side in expectation for the more physical contest that was going to follow the next week against the Sharks. So that's obviously worked. Phase one of two phases has worked out really well for Dan McFarlane, getting the win, getting the 5 points. Now it's about moving into phase two and trying to give a good account of themselves against a very good Sharks team that in everybody's books are going to be 10 to 15 point favourites for this game. But with McCluskey playing well, Luke Marshall playing well, James Hume, it sounds like he's back in the mix for Ulster. Their line-out maul's going really well. Obviously Rory Sutherland is signed as well. A Lions loose head prop. He's probably going to pack down with Marty Moore, Rob Herring in the front row, which is a formidable front row in the URC. So yeah, I don't think this is a given. I think Ulster will certainly give a good account of themselves, but with the muscle, brawn, aggression, physicality that the Shark side at home should have, I think they're maybe just going to nick it in the end.